Flushing girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.
Welcome. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Oh, Mr. Sheffield, a podcast about The Nanny, a hit sitcom from the 90s starring Fran Drescher. I am Shawndeep Pasquale here with
Toria Sheffield.
That's right. And we are here rewatching the show episode by episode. This week, we are on season 5, episode 8, Fair Weather Fran. Toria, how would you summarize this one?
This is the episode where Fran decides that her dream in life is being a weather girl, and we meet Yetta's fiance for the first time. And I'll just spoiler alert, it's Ray Charles. I was really excited. And I'll also say that Fair Weather Fran, I believe that's just a play on the phrase fair weathered friend.
Yes.
Which is, a friend that's only there for you during the good times, not during the bad times. That's one of my mom's biggest disses to someone if they're, quote, a fair weather friend.
This episode was written by Rick Shaw and directed by Dorothy Lyman. And let's dive right into it because I have some overall thoughts, but let's kind of go through it first.
So we start off with Sylvia and Fran in the kitchen at the mansion, and she comes down and she's like, it's just so cool that Yetta's getting married, Fran. Do you know how rare it is for a woman to get married after 35? And Sylvia just goes, 1 in 1,225, like very dryly. And, then actually Yetta comes in and she also talks about how excited she is. And we're just continuing to establish the continuity of the fact that like Yetta has a fiance. For some reason, when they first brought that plot line in like a number of episodes ago, I thought it would be like a throwaway thing that we didn't circle back to, but it's very real. And it becomes even more real because then the doorbell rings. And Yetta's like, oh, it's him. It's Sammy. I'll get it. And then we have like a very kind of like, it's like a very big sight gag. It's very silly because we then cut to Fran and Sylvia. Now they're out sitting on the stairs in the foyer playing cards. And then Yetta finally passes them on her way to the door, insinuating that it's taken her so long to get there. And the door opens. It is Ray Charles, music legend. We then have a very low-hanging fruit, lame, like penis-sized joke because I was just like, when I heard it because he comes in and Sylvia sort of has like her jaw like on the floor. And she goes out, she says this very loudly. I thought this was so rude. She goes to Sylvia, she's like, you neglected to mention that he's black. And then Yetta goes, he's black? And then she goes, no wonder. And then like she and Ray Charles snuggle close. And I was like, okay. But the only thing I really did like about that part was Fran goes, Ma, your mouth's hanging open and there's no chewed up snack wells in it. Like first time for everything.
It was nice to see Ray Charles, I guess. But
yeah,
it wasn't not great.
But luckily just this one exchange because I was tearing up at the end, honestly, at the button.
Well, and I was bracing for, oh no, is the whole episode going to be like this? And then it was really just this one scene with this one joke. And then they kind of steer away from doing a race-based humor.
Because what the episode really ends up being about, like we kind of get to the heart of it in this next scene, Fran is in therapy talking to Dr. Miller, and she's explaining that she just had a dream where Yetta was running down a football field holding a bouquet, running towards Count Basie, who is like another famous black musician. And he's waiting for Yetta in the end zone. And then Miss Piggy carrying a corned beef sandwich walks by and says, you're not getting any younger. And he's like, Fran, it's clear that you're jealous of Yetta and the fact that she is getting married for the second time when you've yet to be married for the first time. And he's like, you need to shift your focus, right? You need to stop fixating on marriage, look at other things that you want, and work on getting the things that you can have, not the things that you don't have, which is good advice. But again, it's very well-worn territory, even for what she talks about with Dr. Miller. And that's more the way I was like, oh, like this will probably be a fine episode, but not my favorite, just because, again, it felt well-worn. But then she's like, you're right. I'm going to focus on becoming a more interesting, mature, independent woman. Maybe then he'll propose, which again, that is something that I feel like people do where
Oh,
It's very
absolutely.
real. They're like so focused on like quote bettering themselves, but only so they'll become more attractive to other people.
Absolutely. And it's something that Fran would do. Like it totally tracks with Fran's personality and everything we know about her and the way she like will kind of like just dive headfirst into a new situation or a new plan.
Yes.
Like all of a sudden, I mean, it happens twice in this episode because first it's like she wants to be a weather girl, which came out of nowhere. And then also she's like, you know what? I'm going to change my whole deal. I'm going to be interesting and mature and independent. And then you're like, okay,
Yeah, yes.
cool.
Well, well, yeah. Well, then we cut back to the mansion,
Yeah.
and Cece's in the office with Mr. Sheffield, and
Mhm.
she's holding the invitation to Yetta's wedding shower. And at first, she's just like dunking on it mercilessly. She's just like making fun of how it's at the old person's home, how it's going to be terrible. But then she's clearly upset when she realizes she didn't get an invitation, and then she's like, "It's fine, it's fine. I have lots of better things to do with my time." And then she wanders out, going, "Yetta, where's my beautiful Yetta?" Like clearly trying to score an invite because she really does have nothing else going on, and this would be the highlight of her week. And then Fran walks in and she sits on Mr. Sheffield's desk and she's like, Mr. Sheffield, I finally have a goal, a purpose. I'm going to become a successful career woman. And he's like, which is it's so vague that it made me laugh. And then he's like, but I thought you wanted to get married and have children. And she's like, why are you asking? Because I can chuck that pipe dream if you are. That also made me chuckle. And
them directly calling it out as a pipe dream, it was really funny.
yes. And the fact that like it's clearly just something to fill her time.
Yeah, it's disposable.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I think that's the perfect job for you. You're going to be wonderful at that. And she like smiles really widely, but then Gracie walks in and says that she wants to be a jockey. And then he's like, that's the perfect job for you, Gracie. You'll be wonderful at that. And he like goes back to his work. And she's like, Rand's like so offended. She's like, oh, you were just humoring me. You think I can't handle the truth. And then he's basically comes clean. He's like, well, yes. I mean, like, this is pretty unrealistic. And it's actually very much mirrors when she decides she's going to be a famous lyricist, remember? A few episodes ago.
Yes.
And just sort of like with that, she like then accuses him of just being afraid that she will be successful and will leave him and like storms out.
It really does feel like if you divorce it from like this is clearly a sitcom and they're just trying to tell stories, it is unhinged behavior. Like it is no normal person would ever react this way. Like,
or decide to be a weather girl this late in life.
That's what I mean. In both cases, it's like she's deciding to do something that is completely unobtainable at this like stage in life, and then she's like doubles down on it just to prove someone wrong. It's like such weird behavior. And
then this made me laugh. She storms out, and then Mr. Sheffield goes over to his little like buzzer intercom, and he just goes, "Niles, what just happened here?" And then Niles over the intercom goes, "Let's roll the tape." And we hear him rewind, which means several things. First of all, Mr. Sheffield knows that Niles listens to every conversation he has, like a super creep. And then also that Niles records every conversation. And I just wrote, they are so codependent and toxic. Like, it's so sick that Niles does that, but also Mr. Sheffield knows. It would almost be like that movie Secretary, remember? Like it would almost be like some weird like sex play thing, but it's not. It's just that they're super toxic together.
You mean the movie Secretary, wherein Jake Gyllenhaal's sister puts reins in her mouth and pretends to be a little horsey?
First of all, her name is Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Maggie,
that's very
right.
productive to call her Jake Gyllenhaal's sister. She's arguably done even cooler stuff, though.
Yeah, like that time she pretends to be a horse in the movie The Secretary. Remember?
Hey, that movie was such a big deal when it came out.
She does, right? She like gets on all fours and like he like puts like a thing in her mouth and spanks her.
It was a movie about like like a BDSM relationship between a boss and his secretary. And
It feels like everything that people said, what was that book that everyone that was like so sexy, but then it's like
50
not.
Shades of Grey.
Yeah, it's like what everyone said or thought that was, but like actually, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it was a pretty, man, that was what a ride that movie was. I remember it came out, everyone went crazy for it. Because
What,
everyone are
50
little
Shades?
perverts. Everyone are degenerate perverts.
50 Shades, you mean, or
The
Secretary?
movie.
Oh,
But so that, although I do love the first 50 Shades movie, I'm not gonna lie, and I will die on this hill. It would have been a great standalone movie. I encourage you guys to watch it and just imagine that it ends at the end of the movie and there's not two more. It would have been good. Hey, you guys should just dabble, watch it, report back to me. But okay, so then
yeah.
after that little episode in the office, the doorbell rings and Fran comes down the stairs just as Sylvia comes out from the other room, and they both go, "If it's my mother, I'm not home." And it's Yetta and Sammy, and Fran greets them really warmly, but Sylvia just goes, "Hello, mother, Samuel." And Fran takes her aside and she's like, "Mom, why are you being so cold to them? Like, is this because he's black or something?" And then she goes, "I, of all people, am not prejudiced. I remember a time when the Jews weren't admitted to the Oyster Bay Country Club." And Fran just goes, "That was just you, Ma, and it's because you stole a steak." And then Sylvia reveals that the real issue is that she's like, "My father's only been dead 25 years and my mother's already moving on. I will never accept that man as my father." And I'm like, sadly, my mother would have pulled something like this as well as a grown woman. Both my grandparents lived to be very old, but had it not happened that way, like everyone would have been extremely weird. Like, even if one of them had moved on like 30 years later. And then Sammy overhears Fran and Mr. Sheffield bickering about this whole weather girl stuff because he's at the house, and he's like, my nephew works down at the station. He could probably help you. And at first, Mr. Sheffield's like super dismissive, and he's like, "Oh, Miss Fine. Ooh, maybe that would be a good lead for your new quote career." But then Sammy's like, "His name's Brian Gumble. Maybe you've heard of him." And Brian Gumble being like one of the like most famous journalists in America.
Yeah.
And
even still.
Yes. Yeah, because he wasn't just a journalist, but then he was like on the Today Show and hosted the early show. So he was one of those journalists that transitioned from like a journalist who is then in your living room every single day, like as you get ready for work, like,
he's got a very distinctive voice too. Like Brian Gumble sounds very distinctive. And it was crazy to hear that voice, which really is unchanged, and see it coming out of like a guy so much younger than I picture him now. He's like a baby here. I was like, oh my God, that's crazy.
But then Mr. Sheffield's like, "Brian Gumble is your nephew?" And he's kind of horrified because he's like, "Oh no, Fran might actually get a really good lead from this." And then as soon as Sylvia hears it, she just goes, "Papa," because she's so opportunistic.
Right.
And then in the next scene, this was so funny. Fran is up in her bedroom rehearsing for her Weather Girl audition with Val and Gracie. And she's like, has like these posters up for her cue cards, and she's like coloring them in. And then she's like, "Gracie, okay, you're going to be the newscaster. So, you just say something that sounds newsy and then you cut to me." And then Gracie's like, "Okay." And then she just pretends to look at a camera and goes, "Today, President Clinton and Chinese President Jiang Zemin signed a pact eliminating nuclear proliferation." Even I can't say it. Eliminating nuclear proliferation in the Far East. And then there's just this beat where Val and Fran stare off sort of mindlessly, and Val just goes, "She talks good." And I laughed so hard. They're so dumb. And then we cut to Fran's, fake little weather report. And in true fan fashion, it's really more just about what you should wear in the weather. She
so
was like,
funny.
Yeah, she's like, I recommend something, like sunny but a little autumnal. And then she also says that if a cold front comes through, she recommends that single women wear bikinis so they'll catch pneumonia and, quote, God willing, meet a nice doctor. It was such a Fran way to do the weather, and I actually
Yes.
loved it. And I also was like, I'm not going to lie, this would be so handy if weather reports came with like, oh, light jacket. Oh, you should probably wear pants. Like,
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, it sounds stupid when you first hear it, but then it's like, oh, well, actually, though, it would be an interesting like service to have to like just translate weather into like wear like a really heavy jacket or just like a hoodie or,
if someone did that work for me, it would be like such a benefit. If someone was like, oh yeah, like, probably wear like a t-shirt earlier, but if you're going to be out past 5, definitely bring a sweatshirt, like little stuff like that, where it truly gets me every time. Cause I'm like, it's so hot right now. There's no way I could possibly feel differently later. And then I'm always like, I'm so cold. So then later that day, Mr. Sheffield is in the foyer putting on his coat, and he tells Niles that he has a meeting with his lawyer. And Niles is like, oh, his office is right by the studio where Miss Fine is having her audition today. Maybe you can stop by and ruin it. And Mr. Sheffield is like, Niles, do you really think I'm that insecure? And so then Niles walks out, but Gracie walks in and she's just like, I'm ready, Daddy. And he's like, perfect. Let's go over it one more time. And then Gracie just pretends to cry and goes, Fran, I really miss you. I'm afraid to be alone. Please come home. And then Mr. Sheffield's like, fantastic. And don't forget to wait for my signal. So he really is that petty. And
they do this to each other a lot. Like, this is not the first time we've seen either Fran or Mr. Sheffield use the children as props to get back at the other one or to manipulate the other one in some way.
Yes, absolutely. To the point where Gracie's like, Dad, like, I can't believe you're using me to manipulate another person. It's so Fran. And he's like, thank you, sweetheart. We then go to the station, and Fran sees Brian Gumbel, and he tells her that they don't actually have a spot for a weather girl, but they do have a spot for an editorial commentator position. And she's like, oh, okay. Like, why not? Like, she clearly has no idea what it is. And he's like, we'll do your screen test today. So we get that in there.
Also, it's like, I had so many problems with this because, first of all, it's like, where did she even come up with this idea to be a weather girl? I assumed all the way up until this scene that like there was some job opening somewhere. Like, but it's even weirder that there's not even like a job she's applying for. She just shows up to a news place and is like, I want to be a weather girl. And then it's also like, from the standpoint of like, they could have just written it to be a weather girl job that she auditions for. Why change it to editorial commentator? Like, I didn't understand. I didn't understand why any of the choices that were made. You know what I mean?
So it's like, for me, it was a weird thing where I kept thinking like, oh, this is so crazy. Like, why would she just walk into the station and assume there was a weather girl position? And then in my head, I would do this thing where I was like, oh no, but it makes sense. Like, because Brian Gumbel's uncle's Ray Charles. So it's probably, when a celebrity requests something, they try to accommodate. And then I would have to go, but wait, no, he's not Ray Charles in the show. He's just Brian Gumbel's uncle.
Yeah, he's just some dude named Sam.
But for a second, I kept being like, oh yeah, like, clearly, everyone feels like they have to humor him because he's Ray Charles. And I was like, oh no, it makes even less sense.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
But so... we then cut back to the mansion, and Cece is bribing Brighton to take her as his +1 to Yetta's shower. And she pays him and then leaves. And then Niles comes in. He's like, does she know that you're not even going to the party and that she's going to be your +1 to the Klingon booth at a Star Trek convention? And he's like, no, he's like, but I should probably tell her. It's so cruel. And then he puts his hands out, basically being like, pay me or I will tell her. So then Niles pops a 20 in his hand, and Brighton's basically like, oh, like it's a lot crueler than that. And he does it in who's the actor? I want to say it's not Bones, the Scottish guy. Whatever.
Oh, from Star Trek, you mean? Scotty.
Scotty. Oh my gosh, of course. I'll never forget the Simpsons joke where they cut to, they're all watching Star Trek, and Scotty goes, he can't press a button, and he goes, I can't do it, sir. I'm just too fat. It was like so weird. But anyway, so we established that happens, and it kind of bummed me out because that doesn't pay off later. Like I 100% thought we would cut to Cece being stuck at a Star Trek convention. But so then we go back to the station, and Brian Gumbel, he's doing the screen test with Fran. And he's like, okay, Fran, I'm just going to like give you a topic and you just give me your thoughts on it. Okay. And he goes, gene therapy. So then Fran looks into the camera and she's like, oh, I'm very pro gene therapy. When you're feeling down, just slide into a pair of jeans that make your tush look good. Do it whenever you need a pick-me-up or need a better grade point average. Which is
She's so stupid.
It's such bad advice. And then Brian Gumbel's just basically like, we'll be in touch. And then he also is like, he's like, Fran, no. Gene therapy means altering your genes with DNA. And she's like, why would you do it? The dry cleaner already overcharges. And he's like, no, Fran, not genes. But so once he says we'll be in touch, he then whispers to a producer, he's like, uncle or no uncle, I'm having him committed. Which was so dark. But that whole thing falls apart just as Mr. Sheffield and Gracie arrive. And it's just in time for Fran to tell them that it was like a total disaster and he was right all along and she should never try new things. And she's like not good enough for this kind of job. And he very, very sweetly, actually, he's like, Miss Fine, like, no, the whole reason I came down here is because I thought you would be successful and I was trying to sabotage you. and she's like, oh, that's so sweet.
They're so dysfunctional at this point.
I know. But I was like, oh, it's kind of him to confess such an embarrassing plan just to make her feel better. Yes. And they leave just as Sammy and Sylvia enter, and Sylvia's like hanging on his arm. And Ray's like, I'm here to see my nephew, Brian Gumbel, for lunch. My little girl is anxious to meet him. And Sylvia's like, this is my daddy. just the way like a little child would. And then the button, I don't know why, but it like made me teary-eyed. It was Yetta sitting next to Sammy at the piano in the mansion. And like it's candlelit, like low lighting. And he is singing her a love song called his Yiddish Mama. And the thing that cheered me up is you could tell that Anne Morgan Gilbert is like genuinely smiling. Like to me, it felt like she almost was breaking character because it was just such a cool, delightful moment, probably in real life. And it was just like, it was a really sweet moment. And I was also like, I'm really happy that that Yetta is like actually clearly so in love. And that's, I was like, I hope they don't kill him off because this is so cute.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I thought the ending was really adorable, and it's always cool to get a free Ray Charles concert. I was like, oh, cool, we're getting a whole Ray Charles song. This is awesome.
And also so different from that. Remember that? God, that artist who they brought back, who they were claiming Brighton would be excited for a few weeks ago. That swing, that like revivalist swing.
Brian Setzer. Yeah. Brian Setzer.
Such a contrast. But so that was the episode.
I would say that this was a solid 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, hey, they can't all be 10s of 10s. It was impossible.
No. It was a passable episode. Not my favorite. Not certainly, not like super flawed or anything. Just okay. Maybe 7 out of 10 because of the Ray Charles of it all. He gets him. He buys him an extra point. All right. Well, then that means it is time to do segments. And now segments.
So, segments.
Yeah, no, I think we should move on to segments.
We can move on to our segments.
And now, segments. With
Sean and Toria.
Yeah. All right. Coming at ya with segments. First up, we have favorite lines and moments. Victoria, what do you got? What do you got?
I really liked when Val and Fran were rehearsing for the Weather Girl audition, and Val's basically like, Fran, if you get this job, there's going to be so many opportunities that open up for you. And then Fran's like, you're so right, Val. Remember that movie, Up Close and Personal? Michelle Pfeiffer started out as a weather girl, and then look who she became. Val goes, who? And Fran goes, oh, well, Michelle Pfeiffer for one thing.
They've really nailed Val and Fran's dynamic this season. Like every time the two of them show up, it's like a great joke, every time.
Yes.
It's great.
I also really liked when Fran found out that Mr. Sheffield was going to try to use Gracie to ruin her chance at this job. She goes, okay. She's like, a little advice. The next time you use a child to manipulate an adult, you got to give them a protein, not a carbohydrate. They lose their concentration. I just love that.
That was one of mine too. I liked it. The other one is I had one specific line that I thought was really great. Is literally my favorite line of the whole episode. And it is Yetta saying, I got an ounce of glaucoma medication that the doctor grew for me, which is just such a funny way of saying the doctor gave me weed. An ounce of glaucoma medicine the doctor grew. I also like the doctor grew it. It was because it's also like, wait, does she think her weed dealer is her doctor, or
is her doctor also a weed dealer?
Yes. It's funny no matter what way you slice it. And then it's also that the tag to that line was she says, it makes me kind of loose. And Fran goes, oh, you mean sexually? And Yetta goes, no.
I know. You're like, uh-oh.
So gross.
Oh, no.
I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, and those are my favorites. Again, it was a fine episode, but it wasn't like chock full of my favorite lines.
Yeah.
And for Yiddish, we had tush. Just a little tush, rough.
Tush, yeah. And another one.
Which one?
Oh, you missed it.
Mm-hmm.
Sei gesund.
Oh, what does that mean?
She signs off at the end of her little editorial commentary. Like she signs off. She goes, signing it off, sei gesund, which is it means like be healthy. It's Yiddish.
Wait, what is it again? Say it one more time.
What in Yiddish or
in English? It cut out.
Oh, it means be healthy.
Oh,
yeah. Sei gesund, be healthy.
I think I assumed it was some sort of German, and then I didn't look it up.
Well, it does come from the German expression sei gesund, which also means be healthy. But
okay, interesting. Okay, I admit one slipped through the cracks this week.
Fascinating. For
Nanny trivia.
Yeah.
Well, firstly, Ray Charles appears in 4 episodes of The Nanny. So he's gonna.
What?
So I'm like, please don't kill him off. I hope he just remains a fixture as Yetta's husband.
That's such a weird. What a weird choice. Where they're like, "Hey, good news! We locked in Ray Charles for a 4-episode guest stint as Yetta's husband." He's like, "What?"
And I couldn't find details on how it happened, but I know that Fran personally asked him.
Amazing.
And also, Coolio will eventually play his nephew. Yep. And I also went down a Ray Charles rabbit hole. His life is so fascinating. Like, I recommend everyone just go read about him. Like, I hadn't seen the movie Ray, which came out quite a while ago now. So maybe some of our younger listeners also wouldn't have. But just a little background on him in case there are some people who are younger than us that might not know that much about Ray Charles, but he was an American singer, songwriter, pianist, and an alto saxophonist, and he's regarded as one of the most iconic and influential singers in history. Mm-hmm. He was often referred to by contemporaries as the genius.
Cool.
And the other famous thing about him is he was blind, and I didn't know this. I assumed he was born blind because I think in my head I was associating it with one of those things where it's maybe not having sight increased his other senses and that's part of his musical ability, blah, blah, blah. But no, I completely made that up. He was blinded during childhood, possibly due to glaucoma. He started losing his sight at age 4 and was completely blind by age 7. And again, he just like, if you read about his early life, it is a wild ride. Like, you know, grew up having almost nothing, you know, lived with, like his mom was sort of like the help in this family and like the head of the house ended up impregnating her. And it was kind of this like, you know, like first it was this big scandal, but then they moved back into the house and the guy's wife like helped raise him with the mom. And then the guy ran off with a different woman. It just seemed like a lot of like, you know, a lot of early displacement but like him and his mom and his little brother being like a team together throughout all of it. And he actually said later in life, because his mom died when he was 14 and his little brother died earlier than that. And he's like, those were the 2 biggest tragedies of my life. And Frank Sinatra called Ray Charles, quote, the only true genius in show business. And Billy Joel said, this may sound like sacrilege, but I think Ray Charles was more important than Elvis Presley.
Wow. I mean, I would agree with that because Elvis Presley sucks and stole most of what he did from people of color, and Ray Charles was great and was actually a person of color, you know. So
yeah,
I would agree with.
It says Charles pioneered soul music, the soul music genre during the 50s, and combined blues, jazz, rhythm, and gospel styles rhythm and gospel styles into the music he recorded. He contributed to the integration of country music, rhythm and blues, and pop music during the 60s with crossover success on ABC Records. He became the first Black musician to be granted artistic control by a mainstream record company. And then this was, I had no idea about this. So he had a very addictive personality. And he famously maybe not famously because I didn't know this, but he struggled a lot with alcohol, heroin, and also women. He claimed women were his third addiction. He had a chess hobby. And it says Charles enjoyed playing as part of his therapy. When he quit heroin, he met with psychiatrist Friedrich Hacker, who taught him how to play chess 3 times a week. He used a special board with raised squares and holes for the pieces. When questioned if people try to cheat against a blind man, he joked, "You can't cheat in chess. I'm going to see that." In a 1991 concert, he referred to Willie Nelson as his chess partner. In 2002, he played and lost to the American Grandmaster and former U.S. champion Larry Evans. Like, what a mind to not only be playing chess at a pretty high level, but to do it while visualizing the board without seeing it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Unless everyone was just too afraid to tell Ray Charles he was really bad at chess. Like, we can't tell him he's too good.
That's pretty cool, though.
Right?
That's really neat. Yeah, what a fascinating guy.
I know that's why I was like, you know what? Like, everyone just go read about him.
When did he pass away?
I want to say like 2004, but that might have actually been when the movie Ray came out. So, but hey, guess what? I can Google it really fast. Ray Charles.
Yeah, I mean, I
2004.
2004. Wow. I was always a fan of his music, but I never really did a deep dive into like his life. But that sounds fascinating. So
yeah,
maybe I got to see that movie.
That's what I thought. Literally after this, I was like, I think I should see Ray. Like it sounds like a good ride. But yeah, so
Jamie Foxx,
that's just
right?
Yeah. And he actually, I think he won the Oscar for that performance. But anyway, so a little deep dive into the special guest star, Mr. Ray Charles, the Fran or the Cece. Who did you relate to, or anyone?
Well, I would have to say that I related to no one this episode. It was a tough one for me. I didn't really.
Not even Brian Gumple?
Yeah, Brian Gumple. I related to Brian Gumple. Because I, too, am a journalist. Mm-hmm. And I work for CNN.
You're a truth sayer.
I am a truth sayer and a soothsayer.
And a witch.
And a witch, yep. And I'm drunk.
Oh. You see, he's
what about you? Who did you?
What is it when you're a they say like that's that word for multi-talent?
A multi-hyphenate?
Yep. You're multi-hyphenate.
Yeah, I'm a
podcaster.
multi-hyphenate.
I'm multi-hyphenate. I'm drunk right now. I said I related to the Mr. Sheffield
Oh,
because
that's actually really funny. Like a boss comes into like a bullpen and goes like, "Hey, Jim, are you drunk at work right now?" And then he goes, "Hey, I'm a multi-hyphenate."
I can do a lot of things well at the same time. Um,
All right. Sorry.
I felt like the Mr. Sheffield because I can be petty and jealous and not admit it.
It's true. You are a petty bee. We all say that about you.
Everyone says that. They say it behind my back and to my face. No, but I actually, here's the thing. I actually think that people are really surprised when they know that about me because I would hide it very well and I seem really like even keeled, but I can be jealous.
Well, that's good of you to admit. I am not a jealous person really at all, to the point where like I've definitely been like walked all over because like I didn't get jealous enough, you know. Like,
I think I remember this.
You know,
story.
like this is fine. This is fine. You know, like oh yeah, they're just friends. This is fine. Oh, what's that? Oh, they're making out over there. Oh.
No, it's the opposite. I'm like, what's that? A female coworker? Give me your phone. But like, I find it to be like my least attractive and most embarrassing quality.
Oh, that's interesting.
And the thing is, I don't actually like demand to see the phone. It's more that I kind of drive myself crazy. Like
you get
coming
that
up with
feeling.
stories.
Yeah. No, I really don't. I don't get that way because I feel very much like if that's going to happen, it effectively ends everything between us. So like whatever, you know, like if that's what it is, then that's what it is, I guess, you know.
Yeah. You're
but
not
to be
gonna
paranoid about it. You know.
You're gonna just roll over and accept it.
I'm just out of here, you know. I would just be you're like goodbye.
No, I mean that's like a lot of self-worth actually. Be like, oh yeah, if you're considering it, then like we have nothing anyway.
Yeah. It's the only self-worth I actually have. All right. Well, speaking of which, I think that's a whole episode of our show, right?
Oh yeah.
All right. Okay. So speaking of self-worth, you can reach out to us and tell us how great we are at Oh Mr. Chef Pod on Instagram or on Twitter, which is currently a horrible hellscape to be. So I don't blame anyone if they're not on Twitter. Or you can email us at Oh Mr. Sheffield Podcast. I do have to give a special shout out to all of our truly lovely, wonderful fans, because ever since I made a pleading for people to please send us emails, we got so many emails. I know I read one last week, but I will read another one. So this one comes in from a fan. I won't say who, but let's just say this person says that they're a new mom who has very little alone time. She says, but in a few moments I enjoy the trip down memory lane to revisit one of my favorite childhood shows of all time. I discovered your podcast while restarting the series for probably the 10th or 100th time. Nobody else I know is really into it, so listening to your show is like reminiscing with two friends every week. Every rewatch, I become more aware of just how many innuendos were actually sprinkled in. They clearly went over my head as a kid and a young adult. Thanks so much for the much-needed mental health break every week. Look forward to your dinosaurs rewatch. So this is big for a couple reasons. First of all, it's really nice that people are sending us emails, and I encourage you to continue doing so. Second of all, this might be our first official fan vote for us to do a dinosaurs podcast after this one. Right?
I'm thinking about it.
I know.
Also, that's such a lovely email. Thank you. I'm sure we could say this person's first name. I don't think that's giving too much. I like it when someone shouts out my name on stuff, but
probably, right? That's not like doxing someone. All right. Well, that came from Jessica. So thank you, Jessica.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. And we're happy to, another alternative to a little mental health break, as a mom is let us babysit the kid. Just put the kid in a room, turn on episode 1 of the podcast, and just let the podcasts play. That's as good as having a babysitter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's the content that babies crave.
It is the content babies crave. That's actually the log line for the podcast.
Yeah.
Content babies crave.
Okay. Well, anyway, thanks everybody so much. We will, you'll hear us next week, and have a really good week, everybody.
Yep. Goodbye.
Bye.
The Flushing girl from Flushing. The nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
I go, Miss Fine.